Every biker knows the big laws. Wear a helmet, don't speed, signal your turns. But the United States, being the quirky patchwork that it is, has a whole bunch of motorcycle laws that'll make you raise an eyebrow. Some are so old they sound like they were written before the wheel was invented. Others are surprisingly useful, but barely anyone knows they exist. Today we're diving into the strange, the forgotten, and the totally overlooked motorcycle laws across America. These are the kind of rules that can save you a ticket, surprise you at a state line, or just give you a good story to tell at the next meetup. Let's fire up the engine and dig into the legal oddities of the biker world. Number 1. It's legal to run a red light in some states. Yeah, you heard that right. In some places like Illinois, Missouri, Minnesota, and a few others, there's a law that lets motorcycles, and sometimes even bicycles, run a red light under certain conditions. Why? Because traffic sensors at lights often don't detect bikes. They're designed for the weight of a car, and your 500-pound cruiser might as well be a ghost to the system. Here's how it works. If you're stuck at a red light that clearly isn't changing, and you've waited a reasonable amount of time, usually around 120 seconds, you're allowed to proceed through the intersection if it's safe to do so. That's huge, because otherwise you'd be stuck waiting for a car to trigger the light for you, or risk a ticket for running it. Now that doesn't mean you could just roll through every red light like you're in a high-speed chase. The laws vary by state, and you'd better be sure it's safe and justified. Cops aren't always sympathetic, especially if you're pulling this move with traffic around. But in the states where it's legal, this little-known law is an absolute lifesaver. Number 2. Some states let you ride without a helmet, but there's a catch. Here's one that always stirs debate: helmet laws. Now, most riders assume that riding without a helmet is flat out illegal across the country, but nope. Some states actually let you ride helmet-free with conditions. Take Florida, for example. You can legally ride without a helmet, but only if you're over 21 and carry at least $10,000 in medical insurance coverage. Same goes for Michigan and Pennsylvania, with some slight variations in age and insurance requirements. The logic? If you're old enough and insured enough to take the hit, the states let you roll the dice. But here's the kicker. A lot of riders hear helmet not required and think they're totally in the clear. They forget the fine print. Insurance requirements vary, and in some states, the law only applies to certain engine sizes or specific type of bikes. And if you get pulled over and don't meet those insurance standards, that could be a hefty fine or even license points. Bottom line, yes, there are states that let you feel the wind in your hair. But unless you know exactly what your local law says, and you got the paperwork to back it up, you could be setting yourself up for more than just a bad hair day. Let's keep rolling. Next law coming up. Number 3. It's illegal to carry a passenger without foot pegs, even if they don't use them. Here's one that catches a lot of riders off guard, especially those taking a buddy for a quick spin around the block. In many states, it's illegal to carry a passenger unless your bike is specifically equipped for it, and that includes passenger foot pegs. Yep, even if your passenger never puts their feet on them. Why does this matter? Because newer riders, or people who have stripped their bikes down for a cleaner look, often remove the rear pegs, thinking they're unnecessary or ugly. But if you throw someone on the back, even for a short ride, and you don't have foot pegs, you're technically breaking the law. And if you get stopped, it's a ticket you won't talk your way out of. Some states go even further, requiring a designated passenger seat as well, not just a padded fender. If your bike doesn't have a seat designed for a second person, it's off limits for passengers. Doesn't matter if they don't mind sitting on the back or won't be there for long. The law's the law. So before you toss your buddy on the back of your cafe racer or stripped down bobber, take a minute to check your local regulations. That 5-minute ride could end up costing you far more than a beer at the bar. Number 4. You're required to have eye protection, even if you have a windshield. A lot of riders think, I got a windshield, I don't need goggles or glasses. Wrong. In several states, including New York, Georgia, and Minnesota, you're legally required to wear some form of eye protection when riding. And no, your stylish squint doesn't count. Even more confusing, the law sometimes applies even if your bike has a windshield. The thinking is, windshields can't fully block debris, bugs, or road grit from hitting your eyes. So unless you've got a visor, riding glasses, or goggles on, you're technically in violation. Some states even specify that your eye protection must be shatter resistant, which rules out regular sunglasses. And if you're riding at night, some states have laws that prohibit dark or tinted lenses after sunset. So even if you were legal at 6 p.m., by 8 p.m. you might unknowingly be breaking the law. These aren't just small town ordinances either. Riders have been pulled over and cited for this exact thing. So next time you head out thinking you're covered by your windshield, double check your state laws. One pair of goggles can save you a whole lot of legal hassle. Number 5. You can get fined for improper foot position. This one sounds like a joke, but it's real. In a few states, including California and Texas, you can be ticketed if your feet aren't on the pegs while the bike is in motion. Yep, take your feet off the pegs to stretch for a second, and if a state trooper sees you, that's enough for a citation. Why does this law exist? It's based on the idea that proper foot placement equals better control of your bike. And while that's true in general, it doesn't take into account real-life riding. Sometimes you move your legs around to relieve cramps, adjust gear, or avoid a hot exhaust pipe. But technically, the moment you're not maintaining full control, you're in violation. This law especially hits newer riders or folks on long-haul trips who shift around to stay comfortable. And don't even think about hanging your legs out like you're relaxing on a beach chair. That'll get you pulled over faster than a wheelie in front of a school zone. So what's the lesson here? Know your state's rules and try not to get too comfortable out there. Apparently, even your feet have to follow the law. Number 6. It's illegal to ride side by side. You've probably seen it 100 times. Two riders cruising side by side in the same lane, chatting, showing off, or just enjoying the ride. It looks cool, feels social, and seems harmless. But in a few states, this kind of riding is actually illegal. While many states allow two motorcycles to share a lane side by side, also called two abreast, others require motorcycles to ride in staggered formation or single file only. States like Montana and Arkansas have had regulations against side-by-side riding, citing visibility and maneuverability concerns. The idea is that by riding side-by-side, you limit your ability to swerve or react quickly, which can be a safety hazard. What makes this law confusing is that in group riding culture, side-by-side formation is sometimes taught during slow group parades or parking lot drills. But once you're out on public roads, especially at speed, some states want riders offset for their safety. Even if the law doesn't explicitly ban it, some officers may interpret it as unsafe operation, especially if traffic's heavy or lanes are narrow. So it seems like a friendly cruise could land you a ticket, or worse, put you in a dangerous spot if things go sideways. Always check the local rules before you and your riding buddy get shoulder to shoulder. That easy ride could get complicated real fast. Number 7. Some states require a separate license for trikes or sidecars. Most riders assume that once you've got your motorcycle endorsement, you're good to go, whether it's a two-wheeler, a trike, or something with a sidecar bolted on. But in certain states like California, that's not the case. They actually require a separate license class, M3 for example, for operating a three-wheeled motorcycle. Why? Because the handling dynamics of a trike are completely different from a traditional bike. No leaning into corners, no counter steering the same way. It's closer to driving an ATV or a small convertible. The DMV figures that if you're going to be on a different kind of machine, you need to prove you can handle it. Now here's where it gets even messier. In some states, if you take your motorcycle test on a trike, you'll only be licensed to ride three-wheeled bikes. You won't legally be allowed to hop on a regular two-wheeler without taking another test. That's caught a lot of people off guard, especially folks buying Can-Ams or custom rigs, thinking they were skipping the hard part of the motorcycle test. If you're thinking of getting into the three-wheeled world, make sure you know what your state requires, because showing up with the wrong license could turn your new toy into an expensive lawn ornament. Number 9. Motorcycles can park on the sidewalk. Here's one of those laws that seems too good to be true, and in some places, it actually is. Believe it or not, there are cities in the U.S. where motorcycles are allowed to park on the sidewalk as long as they don't block pedestrian traffic. San Francisco is a famous example. In some areas of the city, it's totally legal for a bike to pull up on the sidewalk and park, tucked neatly out of the way. Now, before you go launching your Harley onto the nearest curb like it's a stunt show, you need to understand something. These rules are hyper-local. Just because it's legal in one city, or even one part of a city, doesn't mean it applies everywhere. One block over, you could be looking at a hefty fine or even a towed bike. A lot of these laws were put into place to help with motorcycle congestion in urban areas where street parking is scarce and bikes can fit just about anywhere. It makes sense. Why take up a full parking space when your bike barely takes up 6 feet? But here's the trap. Cops love to ticket motorcycles parked on sidewalks just outside the allowed zones, and sometimes the signage isn't clear. You might think you're in a safe spot, but if you're not fully in the know about that area's regulations, you're rolling the dice. So yes, sidewalk parking is a hidden perk in certain cities, but unless you've read the specific rules for that exact spot, don't assume you got a free pass. The law might be on your side, or it might be watching with a ticket book in hand. Number 10. You're required to have a motorcycle-specific license plate light. Here's a quirky little law that flies under the radar. In many U.S. states, your license plate needs to be lit by a white light only, and it must specifically shine downward and directly onto the plate. No colored LEDs, no flashing gimmicks, and definitely no blue glow that makes your bike look like a UFO. A lot of riders, especially those modding their bikes, love adding underglow kits or colored lights to the rear fender. But what they don't realize is that if your license plate light is anything other than standard white, or if it's too dim to clearly illuminate your plate, you could get pulled over. Some states even require that the light remains on whenever the bike is running, day or night. This is enforced more strictly in places like Texas, Georgia, and Arizona, where cops love pulling people over for even the smallest equipment violation. And if you're thinking about going plateless or hiding it in some clever way to make your bike look cleaner, just know that's a fast-track ticket in most states, and can even result in your bike getting impounded in extreme cases. So yeah, while you're obsessing over the perfect exhaust tone and custom paint job, don't forget the boring stuff, like a tiny white light bulb that keeps you legal. Because nothing says rookie move like getting busted for something that costs $5 at the parts store. Number 11. You can ride on the shoulder. Most of the time, riding on the shoulder of a road or highway is a big no-no. It's seen as reckless, dangerous, and illegal in most parts of the country. But there are a few exceptions, very specific, very local exceptions, that can actually let you use the shoulder legally and might even save you from a dangerous traffic jam. Take Minnesota, for example. In the Twin Cities area, there's a special program called Bus-Only Shoulder Use that also allows motorcycles to ride on the shoulder during congestion. But, and this is a big but, it's only on designated highways and only under certain conditions like low traffic speeds. You can't just jump on the shoulder because you're in a hurry. There are speed limits, signage rules, and safety guidelines you have to follow. And while Minnesota might be the poster child for this, there are other places experimenting with similar rules. The idea is simple. In gridlock, motorcycles can become vulnerable to rear-end collisions and overheating. Letting them escape through the shoulder, when done safely, actually makes sense. But again, it depends entirely on your local laws. That means if you're riding through an unfamiliar city and you see another biker cruise past traffic on the shoulder, don't assume it's legal. They might be local and know the deal, or they might be setting you both up for a ticket. The shoulder isn't your personal express lane, but in a few places, it might just be your legal lifeline. Just be sure to do your homework first. Number 12. Lane splitting is legal, or at least tolerated. Now here's a topic that always sparks debate: lane splitting. In most of the US, if you ride between lanes of traffic, you'll get a ticket faster than you can say California dreaming. But in some states, it's not only legal, it's encouraged. California is the only state where lane splitting is fully legal and recognized in the vehicle code. Riders there can legally ride between cars and slow or stop traffic. The idea is that it reduces congestion, prevents rear-end collisions, and keeps traffic flowing smoother for everyone. It's even backed by the California Highway Patrol, with guidelines, of course. But the story doesn't end there. Several other states have begun to dip their toes into the lane-splitting pool. Utah, for instance, has a version called lane filtering. which is legal when traffic is stopped at a light and the biker stays under 15 miles an hour. Arizona passed a similar law recently, and in places like Oregon and Montana, the idea is gaining traction. The problem is, most riders don't realize how state-specific these rules are. Just because you filtered at a red light in Salt Lake City doesn't mean you can do the same in Phoenix without getting pulled over. So if you're crossing state lines, check the local laws. Lane splitting is one of those things that can get you cheers in one place and fines in the next. Know the difference, and don't assume everyone on the road knows the rules you're following. Number 13. Tinted visors are illegal at night. Look, we all love a good tinted visor. It makes you look like a fighter pilot, blocks out the sun, and adds a nice touch of mystery when you're riding into the sunset. But here's a law most riders don't even think about. Those same tinted visors, they're actually illegal to use at night in several U.S. states. Why? Because they reduce visibility, your visibility. And lawmakers, at least the ones who have ever ridden a motorcycle, know how fast things can go south when your field of vision is compromised. That stylish dark visor might be helping you during the day, but the moment the sun dips below the horizon, it becomes a liability. States like California have specific regulations stating that helmet visors must be clear or light tinted when riding at night. If you get pulled over after dark with a dark smoke visor, you're technically in violation. Same goes for New York, Illinois, and several others. Most riders don't even realize this until they get a ticket, or worse, find themselves riding blind into a turn on an unlit road. The smart move: swap in a clear visor at dusk or carry one in your bag just in case. There are also photochromic visors available that darken in sunlight and go clear at night. They're more expensive, but they'll save you the hassle and the risk. This is one of those laws that's less about control and more about common sense. If you can't see, you can't ride safe. And if a cop sees you riding with a blackout visor at 10 p.m., don't be surprised when those blue lights start flashing. There you have it. Some of the weirdest, wildest, and most surprisingly useful motorcycle laws in the U.S. Some might help you out of a jam. Others might just keep you from making a dumb mistake. Either way, knowing them separates the clueless riders from the smart ones. Now I want to hear from you. What's the strangest motorcycle law you've ever heard of? Or better yet, have you ever gotten in trouble for something you didn't know was illegal? Drop it in the comments and let's see how weird this rabbit hole really gets. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep riding smart. Because half the battle is knowing the rules, the other half is knowing when to ignore them.